The guard and the small key. The key was small enough to be forgotten. That was its danger. It rested in the guard's palm every morning as he reported for duty, light as a coin, unremarkable, its teeth worn smooth by years of use. Most keys opened grand things, gates, vaults, doors thick with iron and warning signs. This one did not. And yet, every day, it reminded Tomas that his job was not to protect something valuable, but something avoided. The tower stood at the edge of the city where streets narrowed and buildings leaned away, as if even stone did not wish to linger there. No banners flew from its walls. No visitors arrived. There was no official name carved above its entrance. People simply called it the place that stays closed. Tomas had guarded it for 12 years. He had never been told what was inside, only what must never be let out. Each shift began the same way. He walked the circular path around the tower, boots echoing against stone, listening to the city wake behind him. Merchants shouting, children laughing, life moving forward, always forward, while he remained at the same door, holding the same key, standing between ignorance and whatever truth the tower contained. The door itself was ordinary, wooden, reinforced with iron bands dulled by time. No runes, no symbols, just a lock at chest height, polished from generations of guards before him testing its resistance. Tomas tested it too. Once, early on, he had pressed the key halfway in, felt the internal mechanisms respond, alive, waiting. He pulled his hand back immediately, heart racing, as though the lock had noticed his hesitation. He never tried again. People asked him sometimes what he guarded. He always gave the same answer. A door. That answer satisfied most. Those it didn't tended not to ask twice. At night, when the city quieted and shadows stretched long across the tower walls, Tomas felt it most, the weight of the small key against his chest where it hung on a thin chain. Not heavy, not hot, not cold, just present, as if reminding him that his life had narrowed down to a single choice he was never meant to make. Until the night it slipped from his grasp. Rain had started suddenly, hammering the streets, blurring lantern light into trembling halos. Tomas had just finished his rounds when he felt the chain snap. A sharp, metallic sound cut through the rain, followed by a brief, horrifying lightness. The key hit the ground and skidded toward the door. Tomas lunged, boots slipping on wet stone. His fingers closed around it just before it reached the threshold. He froze there, kneeling, rain soaking into his uniform, the key clenched so tightly his knuckles burned. The lock was inches away. For the first time in 12 years, the distance felt intentional. Tomas stood slowly. The rain softened, becoming a quiet drizzle, as if the night itself were watching. He looked at the key again, really looked at it, not as a duty, but as an object. It was scratched, bent slightly at the tip. Used often. Something about that unsettled him. Who used it? He had been guarding the door for over a decade. No one had come to open it. No one had come to check it. No one had even mentioned it beyond the vague warnings given during his first day. Yet the key bore the marks of repeated turning. That night, sleep did not come easily. Tomas lay in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the echo of the key hitting stone again and again in his mind. He dreamed of doors opening silently, of light spilling out, of voices, not screaming, not pleading, but waiting. By morning, the city buzzed with rumor. Someone had been seen near the tower after dark. Someone who did not belong. Someone carrying nothing at all. Tomas returned to his post earlier than usual. The door looked the same, the lock untouched, but the air around it felt different, charged, expectant. As the sun climbed, a child appeared at the edge of the square, barefoot, no older than 10. She stood staring at the tower with an intensity that made Tomas uneasy. "Can I see the door?" she asked when she noticed him watching. "No," Tomas replied automatically. She tilted her head. "You already have." The words struck deeper than they should have. "Go home," he said, firmer now. Instead, the girl reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and familiar. A key. Not identical, but close enough that Tomas's breath caught painfully in his throat. The girl smiled, not mischievously, but knowingly. "Yours opens it from the outside," she said. "Mine opens it from within." Tomas felt the chain against his chest grow suddenly heavy. For the first time in 12 years, the door did not feel like protection. It felt like a question. Tomas did not move. For a long moment, neither did the child. The square was quiet, too quiet for midday. Even the city seemed to lean away from the tower, as if it sensed the balance shifting. Tomas looked from the small key in the girl's palm to the weight against his own chest. 2 keys. 1 door. A symmetry that felt deliberate rather than accidental. "You shouldn't have that," he said finally. The girl shrugged. "I've always had it. That's impossible." "So is guarding something you're never allowed to understand," she replied gently. Her voice held no accusation, only certainty. Tomas felt something crack inside him. Not fear, not anger, but the brittle shell of obedience he had worn for years. "What's in there?" he asked before he could stop himself. The girl stepped closer. Each footfall echoed softly against stone. "What was locked away so the city could feel safe," she said. "And what was locked away so you wouldn't have to choose." She stopped a few steps from the door. Up close, Tomas noticed things he hadn't before. The dust on her knees, the way her fingers curled protectively around the key, the calm in her eyes. This was not a child playing games. This was a messenger. "You've guarded this place longer than anyone," she continued. "That's why it had to be you." "Had to be me for what?" "To decide whether it stays closed." Tomas let out a bitter laugh. "I haven't decided anything. I was told to stand here, to keep it locked." "And you did," she said, "faithfully, even when the city forgot why." She gestured toward the door. "But things kept in the dark don't disappear. They wait. They press. They change." The air shifted again. Subtle. Almost imperceptible. Tomas felt it through his boots, through his ribs, like a heartbeat beneath stone. He realized then that the tower wasn't empty. It was full. Long ago, the girl said, this place held a truth the city couldn't bear. Not a monster. Not a weapon. A memory. One that demanded responsibility. Tomas swallowed. What kind of memory needs guarding? "The kind that reminds people what they did to survive," she said softly, "and what they lost in the process." Images rose unbidden in Tomas's mind. Old stories whispered by elders, half-remembered tales of a time when the city had turned away from something inconvenient, choosing comfort over courage. He had dismissed them as myths. He understood now why the key was worn. Someone had used it. Once. "Why now?" he asked. "Because the weight has shifted," the girl replied. "The city has grown comfortable again. Forgetful. And the door has waited long enough." She held out her key. "It won't open unless both are used. Outside and inside. Guard and truth. Keeper and witness." Tomas's hand trembled as he unclasped the chain around his neck. The small key rested in his palm once more. It no longer felt harmless. It felt earned. He stepped forward. The lock accepted his key smoothly, as if it had always known the shape of his decision. The girl pressed her key into a smaller slot Tomas had never noticed before, hidden within the ironwork. They turned them together. The sound was not loud. No grinding of stone. No dramatic creak. Just a soft click, followed by something deeper, a release. Light spilled through the seam of the door. Not blinding. Warm. Honest. The door opened inward. Inside was no prison, no chains, no darkness. There was a room filled with names, carved into the walls, written on paper, etched into wood and stone, thousands of them, ordinary names, forgotten names, the names of people the city had abandoned, sacrificed, or erased to preserve its image of peace. Tomas's breath caught. At the center of the room stood a mirror, not reflective in the usual way. When Tomas stepped closer, he did not see his face as it was now, but as it had been each time, he chose silence over question, obedience over responsibility. The girl stood beside him. "This is what was locked away," she said. "Not guilt. Accountability." Tomas turned away from the mirror, tears blurring his vision. "What happens now?" "Now the door stays open," she said. "Not for punishment, for remembrance." The city stirred beyond the tower walls. People gathered. Whispers spread. Some turned away. Some stepped closer. Tomas moved aside from the doorway. For the first time, he was no longer a guard. He was a witness. And the small key, at last, had done what it was meant to do.